Yeah. All right, so next is material of construction. All right, and we're gonna list these out like we did before, where we got the oh, let's do this. Start a little bit lower here. DS, VBS, PBS, oh no, radio flow, PBS, VTS, SAH, EFU, and then DC. Okay. All right. So we have various materials of construction. I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to write up here kind of standard materials. So first thing we're going to have is called HDPE, high density polyethylene plastic. Okay. It's called high density because it's a really tough plastic. High density talks about how the strands of plastic are all in there. It's a strong plastic. It's in a black color that's very UV resistant. So if it sits outside, it's not going to deteriorate like some plastics would sitting outside in the sun. So that's HDPE. And then there's FRP. Is that right? FRP?
That's right.
That's right. Okay. FRP.
That's my favorite one. I knew you was going to turn on that one.
FPR,
That's good,
FRP, FRR.
I always get it backwards.
Yeah.
Or turn it around.
So there's FRP, which is fiberglass reinforced plastic, okay? Which is, keep in mind, this is plastic. So the primary difference between this and this is that it has this letter in there, the F or the FR, fiberglass reinforced. There's literally strands of glass fibers that are in the plastic which make it much more rigid and strong. Because glass is not flexible, so if you put that glass into the plastic, then it makes the flexible plastic not so flexible any longer. Okay, it gives it a lot of strength. Okay, so that's FRP. Okay, and then we start with with some of the metals, and this is aluminized steel. Okay, aluminized steel means that they've taken sheet metal steel and they've basically covered it with aluminum. They've gone through an aluminum dip basically on it. I think it's probably done electrostatically, and there's a layer of aluminum on top of the steel. So the advantage there is that it's strong because it has the strength of steel. It's low cost because it has the low cost of steel, but the aluminized steel means that it has a high resistance to corrosion, okay? Because aluminum is very resistant to corrosion. So this is an affordable corrosion-resistant material, okay? And it doesn't require any kind of painting. In its naked aluminized form, it doesn't corrode very easily. You can paint it if you wanted to, then make it super corrosion resistant, but you don't have to, okay? This is the material, like for instance, the muffler on your car is made of that. Muffler on your car actually takes a beating all the time, right? It's taking a lot of heat. There's actually a lot of liquid that comes out of your engine in the way of water vapor. You've got salts and rain on the street. They're getting kicked up on it all the time. And a muffler can corrode very easily, but they've gone to these aluminized steels, and they don't, you young guys won't remember this, but it used to be you'd have to get a new muffler like every 3 years, kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
And now,
you don't see those muffler shops anymore.
the muffler shops they've all turned into brake shops, and repair shops. There aren't muffler guys any longer. There's guys that can do mufflers, but they got to find something else to do because mufflers last for a long time now because of that. Okay, so there's aluminized steel. There's painted or coated steel.
Cold rolled steel.
Okay, and this is just plain steel that we would bring in. Usually it has some type of a coating on it called a galvanneal or something like that that just prevents it from rusting while it's sitting around in our shop. Okay, but then we actually send it off and have it painted. And you could either do like a liquid painting system, like a car might get. Okay, you'd spray a primer on there, and then you'd spray whatever color or whatever paint you want on there. And you can usually use an epoxy paint, which means you take two chemicals together and you mix them together, and you spray, and when you spray it on the unit, those chemicals react and turn into a hard shell, like an epoxy glue will. All right, so that's a super nice paint, is an epoxy resin glue, I mean an epoxy resin paint, okay? Or you can do what's called powder coating. The powder coating means that you take that same kind of paint, it's these paint particles, right? And you make them magnetic, you ionize them, and you make the unit you're going to paint a positive, and you make the paint a negative charge. And when you spray this powder onto it, the powder goes and it latches onto the paint and sticks on there. And then you put it into a hot oven and you basically melt that powder and you turn it into this beautiful hard coating that's on there that's called powder coat. Super nice, super resistant coating on there, powder coating. So you can do one or the other. Then we've got 304 stainless steel. Okay, so stainless steel, you guys know what stainless steel is, but there's two grades that we work with. One is called 304, which is a lower cost and pretty good stuff, a pretty resistant material. Okay, and then kind of the bad daddy of all stainless is called 316 stainless steel. And 316 is super resistant to corrosion, like saltwater corrosion, all sorts of stuff like this. If you took 304 and you took it down to the ocean salt would rust it. Okay, a lot of things won't rust it, but ocean salt will rust 304. Not real quickly, but it'll eventually rust. 316 generally is not affected by ocean salt. So the units that Alex is working on are 316 stainless, but then they are also painted too, this Mlulu job. So they had to have everything. And then I guess the last thing I'll put is double wall. Okay, and typically double wall can either be in stainless steel or in aluminized or even in painted steel. We'll discuss that. So what do we do drum scrubbers in? Our standard drum scrubber is HDPE. That's the standard. Remember, a drum scrubber is a kind of a standard unit. There's not a whole lot to it. Can we do it in FRP? Well, the answer is yes. We've done some in FRP. If a customer requires FRP, we kind of will. But we generally kind of call that a VBS if it's an FRP. Okay? A VBS, okay, that can either be, how do I want to do this? I'll do 2 checks for standard and 1 check for possible, kind of. Let's do that. So 2 checks, 1 check. The VBS, we can do either VBS, either HDPE or FRP. Okay. Interestingly enough, we can also do a VBS in stainless steel. We have a job in-house right now. Who's got the paper job with Bob Darling and
Archie.
AWC. Yeah. That AWC job is actually VBS units, but they're rectangular VBS units.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the AWC job.
But now, oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's technically a VBS unit because it has a vertical flow in it. And so, and we're building those out of 304 stainless. Could we build out of 316? Well, we could, yeah. But generally we don't. Okay, a radial flow unit, we could do in HDPE or FRP. Technically, we could probably do it in other materials, but there's not a market need for it. PBS unit. So the standard for a PBS is FRP for odor or emergency gas scrubber. Okay, so we're gonna do that in a PBS for odor emergency gas scrubber, and it's typically gonna be in stainless steel for protecting electronics. Rich doesn't know it, but we're about to get a PBS, a PBS in 304 for Chile, and congratulations on business.
Oh, yeah, great. We were bored.
We'll just outsource that. So yeah, that's coming in the next day or two. VTS follows the same for, and really just for odor, we've never done a VTS. Actually, we have done a VTS since EGS, haven't we? Odor and EGS. Okay, for VTS, and then in 304 stainless again for protecting electronics. Okay, all right, SAH unit. Interesting enough, we've done some SAH units for odor. Okay, I'm only going to give it one check there because typically, as I was saying before, you have to, a higher odor control requires a deep bed unit, and typically a cassette unit's not good for odor control. But we've run into some special cases where a customer had a very tight space and a very low odor level, and we were able to make a SAH unit work for them. All right, so there's that option that we have that. But typically, the SAH unit is aluminized steel, for sure. It could be painted steel, it could be 304, it could be 316, and it could certainly be this double wall, which we'll talk about a little bit more in double wall in a minute, okay? So this is, the SAH was the one that really has all the options as far as materials of construction, okay? Our standard, though, is aluminized steel because it's lowest in cost, very good resistance to corrosion. The PFU is almost always painted steel, okay? So it's painted steel double check. Occasionally we'll do a 304 stainless, occasionally even a 316 stainless, okay? But the standard is painted steel. And then DC units are just painted steel. All right. You guys follow it fairly well with that? Eventually I'm going to try to formalize this in something that can be read rather than easily read, but and referred back to. But so, and then I guess let's talk about double wall material. Okay, so some customers want to have specifically usually a side access unit in a double wall material. All right, and a double wall material just means that if you cut through the side of the unit, you're going to have two sheets of metal, and in between it is going to be some type of insulation.
So it's insulation purposes then?
Typically for insulation purposes. I can tell you that we have some competitors. Yeah, that's right. So this would be temp or insulation or sound insulation. Kind of the same thing. Okay. Typically, one of these thicknesses don't have to be as thick as the other. Usually the outside casing is the thickest and the inside is just kind of there to keep the insulation in, but you can make them the same thicknesses. Our kitchen exhaust units, I didn't really mention the kitchen exhaust. So a subset of the SAH is the EC or EP?
Yeah, EC.
EC, yeah, EC. Is the EC unit. And the EC unit stands for Everclean? EcoClean. EcoClean, thank you. EcoClean, and that's used in a system that comes off of a kitchen exhaust, so the hood of a kitchen, okay? We're taking that air off of the hood of the kitchen, and we're taking out the smoke and the odor coming off the hood of the kitchen. There's actually a big market in the Middle East for these systems. The building codes have been written there that they have to use these type of systems. But because that air coming off the grill is hot, then there's always the possibility that you could have a duct fire coming off of the kitchen hood, because in a kitchen environment, you're always pulling greases and things up into the air, and a lot of times the duct coming away from that kitchen hood gets grease in it, and then they have a kitchen fire, and the fire actually goes up, captures through the duct. So a lot of times they'll require that we use double wall insulation for temperature and also really for fire protection, right? So if you get a fire in here, then it's going to be more resistant to breaking through if it's a double wall in there. And you'll put fiberglass insulation in here, okay? But we do have competitors that make a system which is called a pentapost construction. A pentapost construction basically takes aluminum framing, and you make the frame, and we've done a little bit of this ourselves, and then you make these sandwich panels that are made of what's called honeycomb material. It's kind of a board has honeycomb material sandwiched between them, and they cut those panels out, and they make an air handling unit out of that material. And so the only purpose in that reason for making a double wall is just to make it strong, because they make this material really, really thin and cheap, but the sandwich itself is stronger. Don't worry about that too much. So, but for the EC unit, which is a subset of the SAH unit, we're concerned about temperature and fire, basically, there. All right. Let me go back to the SAH and just talk about the EC units, because we talked about final filters and things. But for an EC unit, remember how I said in an SAH unit you had a pre-filter, and then you had our cassettes, all right, cassettes, and then you had a final filter, right? Well, that's because we're taking air from the outside and we're purifying it, and we're pushing air into the inside of some room, okay? A control room where the electronics are or something like that. So we're taking dirty air and we're cleaning it and sending it inside the room, okay? For an EC unit, it's a little different setup, because remember, we're taking air from the inside, okay, the kitchen, and we're sending it outside, okay? So typically what we're trying to do there is we'll still have a pre-filter, but then we're going to have the final filter here, okay? And then we're going to have the cassettes. Okay, and the reason for that is that the smoke and the dust and everything would end up accumulating on these cassettes very, very easily. And so in this environment, we want to use a pre-filter to take out a good portion of the dust. We use a final filter here that's called a bag filter, a bag or a pocket filter, okay, which is kind of a big sack, and it holds a whole lot of dust and smoke here. So we use these bag filters. So first we take out all the smoke, then we capture the odor, and then we send it out. Well, our adsorbent media inside our cassettes can sometimes be a little dusty, and so when you turn it on, one of the reasons why our protecting electronic unit has that final filter is because we're preventing our dust from getting into the control room. Well, this is just exhausting out to the street someplace, or the rooftop or something like that. So if a little bit of carbon dust got out when you first turned the system on, nobody really cares, right? So that's why we put the final filters there instead of at the end. Okay, so that's the primary difference between this EC unit, kitchen exhaust unit, and a standard SAH unit. And they're also double walled as well, all the kitchen exhaust units. All right. What else? I think that was fairly exhaustive, wasn't it? It was
Yep.
exhausting. So, all right, guys, so that's sessions 1, 2, and 3 of basic pure air design. Let me know if you have any questions ongoing, but hopefully that gives you a good basis to work from and understand what's going on, and we can kind of go from there. All right? Excellent, thank you.
Kevin, what's the difference between a pre-filter and a